30 years ago, a girl's body was found in a Massachusetts forest, her life stolen in a brutal cold case murder. The police had one clue: a blood-stained handkerchief clutched in her hand. For decades, it sat in an evidence locker, mocking every detective who tried to crack the case. Today, in April 2025, that same handkerchief has spoken, its DNA pointing to a killer who's walked free for 30 years. Welcome to The Bloodstained Handkerchief, a true crime podcast 2025 that will unravel a Boston murder mystery hidden in plain sight. In 1995, Sarah Evans was 19, a college freshman with a bright smile and a habit of hiking in the woods near Boston. On October 12th, she didn't come home. Her body was found 2 days later in Hills Reservation, her throat slashed, her clothes torn. The scene was grim. Leaves matted with blood, her backpack nearby, and a white handkerchief, soaked in blood, gripped in her hand. The police scoured the area, interviewed friends, and chased leads, but the case went cold. The handkerchief, bagged and forgotten, held no answers. Until now. Detective Amy Carter, a 38-year-old cold case specialist, got the call on April 10, 2025. The lab had run new DNA tests, and the handkerchief had a match. Jonathan Wheeler, a 55-year-old family man, a deacon at St. Mary's Church, living a quiet life in suburban Boston. Amy stood in the precinct, the old case file open on her desk. Sarah's photo stared back, bright eyes, a life cut short. The DNA report was clear. Jonathan's blood was on the handkerchief, a 99.9% match. But his record was spotless. No arrests, no ties to Sarah. He was 25 in 1995, a nobody with no known connection to the victim. Amy drove to his house, a tidy colonial in Newton. Jonathan answered the door, his face warm, his wife Ellen smiling behind him. "Detective," he said, his voice steady, "how can I help?" Amy held up the evidence bag, the handkerchief inside. "We need to talk about Sarah Evans," she said. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes flickered, just for a second. The precinct was buzzing with the news. A cold case murder cracked after 30 years. Amy's partner, Mike Russo, was skeptical. "Guy's a saint, Amy," he said, flipping through Jonathan's file. "Church volunteer, 2 kids, coaches Little League. You sure about this?" Amy wasn't sure, but the DNA was. She dug into Jonathan's past. Born in Boston, worked odd jobs in the 90s, now a respected accountant. No link to Sarah, no criminal history. She visited St. Mary's Church, where Jonathan led Sunday services. The pastor praised him. "Jonathan's our rock, always helping." But Amy noticed a photo on the wall. Jonathan, in 1995, younger, leaner, standing near Blue Hills during a church hike. Her pulse quickened. Was he there when Sarah died? That night, Amy pored over the old case file. Sarah's friends described her as trusting, always hiking alone. The handkerchief was the key. Cotton, monogrammed with a faint J, but no one had connected it to Jonathan back then. DNA tech wasn't advanced enough. Amy called the lab, demanding more tests. She said, "Check for secondary DNA. If it's his blood, maybe Sarah scratched him." The tech hesitated. "That'll take days, detective." Amy didn't have days. She drove to Blue Hills, the forest quiet under the April moon. The crime scene photos guided her to the spot, now overgrown but eerie. She found a tree with old carvings, initials faded but legible. J.W. Her heart stopped. Jonathan Wheeler? Back at the precinct, Amy pulled Jonathan's DMV records from 1995. He'd lived 5 miles from Blue Hills, worked as a delivery driver, close enough to know the trails. She called Sarah's best friend, now a lawyer in Boston. "Did Sarah ever mention a guy named Jonathan?" Amy asked. The friend paused. "She talked about a creepy guy on the trails once, someone who kept showing up. Never got his name." Amy's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Leave the past alone, detective." She froze, the forest silence ringing in her ears. Someone knew she was digging, and they didn't like it. The next day, Amy tailed Jonathan to his office, a quiet accounting firm. He was calm, shaking hands with clients, but she caught him glancing at his phone, his face tight. She slipped into the church after hours, searching his office. A locked drawer held a photo album. Family pictures, but one from 1995 showed Jonathan in the woods, his smile sharp, and a handkerchief tucked in his pocket. Amy's hand shook as she photographed it. A noise made her spin, the church door creaking. She hid, her heart pounding, as footsteps echoed closer. A shadow passed, then vanished. Her phone buzzed again. "You're digging too deep." Amy gripped her gun, the handkerchief's weight heavy in her mind. Jonathan wasn't just a suspect. He was a ghost from a Boston murder mystery, and someone was protecting his secret. The streets of Boston hum with secrets, but in April 2025, one is clawing its way to the surface. 30 years ago, Sarah Evans, a 19-year-old college freshman, was found dead in Blue Hills Reservation, her throat slashed, a blood-stained handkerchief clutched in her hand. The cold case murder went unsolved, the killer slipping into the shadows. Now, a DNA match has named Jonathan Wheeler, a 55-year-old deacon, family man, and pillar of the community, as the man whose blood was on that cloth. Detective Amy Carter is chasing a ghost, but every step pulls her deeper into a Boston murder mystery. Threats are piling up, and someone wants this case buried again. Welcome back to the blood-stained handkerchief, where the past refuses to stay silent. Amy sat in her precinct office, the city's pulse a dull roar outside. The blood-stained handkerchief lay in an evidence bag on her desk, its faded J staring back like an accusation. Jonathan Wheeler's DNA was a 99.9% match, but his life was too clean. Church volunteer, married to Ellen, father of two, no criminal record. Amy's board was filling up. Sarah's photo, the handkerchief, a 1995 church hike picture with Jonathan near Blue Hills, and tree carvings with J.W. She'd found a photo in his church office showing him with a similar handkerchief in 1995. But why was he in those woods? And why was someone texting her to back off? Her latest message, "You're digging too deep," sat heavy in her phone. She drove to Jonathan's accounting firm in Newton, the spring air heavy with rain. He was with a client, his smile warm, but Amy caught him checking his watch, his fingers twitching. She waited, watching from her car. At dusk, he left, driving to a quiet bar downtown. Amy followed, her heart pounding. Inside, Jonathan met a man in a gray coat, their voices low. She couldn't hear them, but the man handed Jonathan a small envelope, his eyes scanning the room. Amy snapped photos, her camera silent. As Jonathan left, the man turned, his face half hidden but familiar. Someone from Sarah's case file, maybe a witness. Her phone buzzed. "Stop following him, Carter." She froze, her eyes darting around the bar. Someone was close. Back at the precinct, Amy pulled Sarah's case file again. The man in the gray coat was Paul Dorsey, a park ranger in 1995 who'd found Sarah's body. Now, retired, he lived in South Boston. Amy drove to his apartment, a run-down building by the waterfront. Dorsey was cagey, his hands shaking as he let her in. "I told the cops everything back then," he said, avoiding her eyes. Amy held up the photo from the bar. "Then why are you meeting Jonathan Wheeler?" Dorsey paled. "Just a drink. Old friends." But his voice cracked. She pressed. "Your name's in the file, Paul. You saw something in those woods, didn't you?" He shook his head, but his eyes flicked to a locked drawer. "Leave it alone," he muttered. "Some things stay buried." That night, Amy broke into the church again, her flashlight sweeping Jonathan's office. The locked drawer was empty now, the photo album gone. But under a floorboard, she found a small key etched with BHR, Blue Hills Reservation. Her pulse raced. Was it to a lockbox, a hideout? She drove to the forest, the moon casting shadows over the trails. The crime scene was overgrown, but she found the carved tree again, JW still visible. Nearby, a rusted lockbox was buried under leaves. The key fit, revealing a faded letter, unsigned, dated October 1995. You were seen. Keep quiet or you're next. Amy's blood ran cold. Was this meant for Jonathan or someone else? Her phone buzzed. You're not safe, Carter. The next day, she called the lab, pushing for the secondary DNA results. We found skin cells under Sarah's nails, the tech said. They're testing now, but it's degraded, might not match. Amy's mind spun. If Sarah fought back, the killer could have scars. She visited Sarah's old roommate, Lisa, now a teacher. Did Sarah ever mention anyone following her? Amy asked. Lisa frowned. She said some guy kept showing up on her hikes. Tall, quiet. She thought he was harmless, but it creeped her out. Amy showed her Jonathan's 1995 photo. Her eyes widened. That's him! I saw him once near campus. Amy's heart stopped. Jonathan wasn't just near the woods. He'd been stalking Sarah. Amy tailed Jonathan again, this time to a storage unit in Dorchester. He carried a box inside, his movements quick. She waited, then picked the lock. The unit was sparse, old furniture, files, and a locked safe. She cracked it, finding a knife, its blade stained with age. Her hands shook as she bagged it. Was this the murder weapon? A noise made her spin, the door creaking open. She hid behind a crate, her gun ready. Footsteps circled, then stopped. A voice whispered, "You can't hide forever, detective." It wasn't Jonathan's. She waited, heart pounding, until the footsteps faded. Outside, her car's tires were slashed. Her phone buzzed. Last warning. Back at the precinct, Amy handed the knife to Galab. Rush it, she told the tech. She pulled Paul Dorsey's file again. He'd been questioned in 1995, but cleared. No motive, no evidence. Yet he was meeting Jonathan now. She called Mike Russo, her partner. Dorsey's hiding something, she said. He's linked to Wheeler. Mike sighed. Amy, you're stirring a hornet's nest. Wheeler's got friends. Church, City Hall. But Amy couldn't stop. The handkerchief, the letter, the knife, it was all connected. Jonathan wasn't just a suspect, he was a predator hiding behind a perfect life. And someone, maybe Dorsey, was helping him keep his secret. The True Crime Podcast 2025 was heating up, and Amy was walking a tightrope over a Boston murder mystery that someone wanted buried forever. The shadows of Boston are growing darker, and in April 2025, a 30-year-old cold case murder is clawing its way back to life. Sarah Evans, a 19-year-old college freshman, was found dead in Hills Reservation in 1995, her throat slashed, a blood-stained handkerchief gripped in her hand. The killer slipped away, leaving the police with nothing but questions. Now, a DNA match points to Jonathan Wheeler, a 55-year-old Deacon and family man, his blood on that very cloth. Detective Amy Carter is chasing a truth that's unraveling fast, but every clue comes with a threat. A knife, a letter, a mysterious park ranger. Someone wants this Boston murder mystery buried for good. Welcome back to the blood-stained handkerchief, where the past is a dangerous place to dig. Amy stood in her precinct office, the city's hum a distant pulse. The knife she'd found in Jonathan Wheeler's storage unit sat in an evidence bag, its blade stained with decades-old blood. The lab was testing it, but Amy's gut screamed, this was the murder weapon. The blood-stained handkerchief, monogrammed with a faint J, was a 99.9% match to Jonathan's DNA. A letter from a lockbox in Blue Hills, dated 1995, warned someone to keep quiet. And Paul Dorsey, the retired park ranger who found Sarah's body, was meeting Jonathan in secret. Amy's phone buzzed with another anonymous text. You're playing with fire, Carter. Her hands shook, but she pinned a new photo to her board. Jonathan in 1995, standing in the woods, a handkerchief in his pocket, his smile too sharp for a church hike. She drove to Blue Hills Reservation at dawn, the forest waking under a gray April sky. The carved tree with JW stood like a tombstone, marking Sarah's crime scene. She retraced the trail, her flashlight catching a glint in the dirt, a rusted button, monogrammed with the same J as the handkerchief. She bagged it, her heart racing. Was it Jonathan's? She called the lab, pushing for results on the knife and Sarah's nail clippings. The blood on the knifes degraded, the text said, but we're close on the skin cells. Might be a match. Amy's mind spun. If Sarah scratched her killer, Jonathan could have scars, proof he'd never shaken off. But the threats were escalating and someone was watching her every move. She tailed Jonathan again, this time to St. Mary's Church. He was leading a prayer group, his voice calm, his wife Ellen smiling beside him. But Amy noticed his sleeve, pulled low, covering his forearm. Scars? She waited until he stepped into his office, then followed, pretending to ask about church events. "Jonathan," she said, her voice casual, "ever get hurt hiking in Blue Hills back in the day?" His eyes flicked to his sleeve, his smile tight. "Never hiked much," he said. "Too busy working." But his hand twitched, and Amy saw it, a faint scar peeking out, jagged and old. She left, her pulse pounding, and called Mike Russo, her partner. "He's hiding scars, Mike. Check his medical records from '95. That night, Amy broke into Paul Dorsey's apartment, the waterfront air thick with salt. Dorsey was out, but his place was a mess. Old ranger logs, photos, and a locked safe. She cracked it, finding a journal from 1995. An entry dated October 13th, the day after Sarah's body was found, read, "Saw him in the woods. He begged me to stay quiet. Paid me $500. Amy's breath caught. Dorsey had seen the killer. Jonathan? She photographed the page, but headlights flashed outside. She ducked, her gun ready, as Dorsey's car pulled up. He entered, his face pale, and went straight for the safe. Amy slipped out, but not before hearing him mutter, "He'll kill me if this gets out." Her phone buzzed. "You're too close, Carter." The next morning, Mike called with a lead. He said, Jonathan had a hospital visit in October '95. Stitches on his arm, said it was a work accident. Amy Furt stopped. The timing matched Sarah's murder. She drove to Dorsey's old ranger station, now abandoned, near Blue Hills. Inside, she found a box of 1995 reports, one mentioning a local man seen near the crime scene, dismissed as a hiker. The description fit Jonathan. Tall, quiet, early 20s. Amy's phone rang, an unknown number. She answered, and a distorted voice hissed, "The woods aren't safe, detective." The line went dead. She spun, the forest silent, but her skin prickled. Someone was out there. Amy confronted Dorsey at his apartment, slamming the journal on his table. "You saw Jonathan that night," she said. "Why'd you cover for him?" Dorsey's hands shook. "I didn't know he killed her," he stammered. "He was bleeding, said he fell, gave me cash to shut up." Amy leaned closer. "Who's protecting him now?" Dorsey's eyes darted to the door. "People with money. People who don't like questions." Before she could press, her phone buzzed. A picture of her in the woods, taken hours ago. The message read, "Back off or you're next." Amy's blood ran cold. Dorsey grabbed her arm. "They'll kill us both, Carter. Let it go." Back at the precinct, the lab called. Skin cells under Sarah's nails matched Jonathan's DNA, and the knife's blood, it's hers. Amy's world tilted. Jonathan was the killer, but someone powerful was shielding him. She pulled his financials, clean now, but in 1995, he'd received a $10,000 deposit. No source listed. A payoff. She tailed him to a charity gala where he shook hands with city officials, his smile perfect. But Amy saw Paul Dorsey in the crowd, watching Jonathan, his face pale. She followed Dorsey outside, but a car screeched by, nearly hitting her. Her phone buzzed again. Last chance, Carter. The True Crime Podcast 2025 was closing in on the truth, but the Boston murder mystery was a web of lies, and Amy was caught in its center, with a killer who knew her every step. Boston streets pulse with secrets. But in April 2025, one is bleeding into the light. 30 years ago, Sarah Evans, a 19-year-old college freshman, was found dead in Hills Reservation. Her throat slashed, a blood-stained handkerchief clutched in her hand. The cold case murder went unsolved, but now DNA has named Jonathan Wheeler, a 55-year-old Deacon and family man, as the killer. His blood on the handkerchief, his DNA under Sarah's nails, and a knife with her blood point to guilt. Detective Amy Carter is closing in, but the threats are mounting. Texts, slashed tires, a near miss with a car. Paul Dorsey, the park ranger who found Sarah's body, knows more than he's saying, and someone powerful is protecting Jonathan. Welcome back to the blood-stained handkerchief, where every clue pulls you deeper into a Boston murder mystery. Amy stood in her precinct office, the city's hum a faint echo. The evidence was damning. Jonathan's DNA on the handkerchief, Sarah's blood on the knife from his storage unit, and skin cells under her nails confirming he was at the scene. A 1995 letter warned someone to keep quiet, and Paul Dorsey's journal admitted he saw Jonathan in the woods, bleeding, paid to stay silent. Yet Jonathan walked free. His life a perfect mask. Church deacon, loving husband to Ellen, father of 2. Amy's phone buzzed with another text. "You're dead if you keep digging, Carter." Her hand shook, but she pinned a new photo to her board. Jonathan at a gala, shaking hands with a man she recognized, Edward Klein, a city councilor with deep pockets and deeper connections. She drove to Klein's office downtown, the spring rain slicking the streets. Klein was polished, his smile practiced. "Detective," he said, leaning back, "I hear you're chasing ghosts." Amy held up a photo of him with Jonathan. "This ghost killed Sarah Evans, and you're linked to him." Klein's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Careful, Carter. You're accusing a respected man." She pressed. "Why was Jonathan paid $10,000 in '95? Who's covering for him?" Klein stood, his voice low. "You're out of your depth. Drop it." Amy left, but not before slipping a tracker under his car. Her gut screamed, "Klein's the key to whoever was shielding Jonathan." That night, Amy followed Klein's car to a warehouse in South Boston, its windows dark. She parked a block away with her camera ready. Jonathan was there, unloading a box with Klein. Amy zoomed in. Documents, photos, and a familiar handkerchief, its J visible. Her heart raced. Was this a cleanup? She snapped photos, but a guard spotted her, his flashlight blinding. She ducked, her breath shallow, as footsteps approached. Her phone buzzed. "You were warned." She slipped away, but her car's windshield was smashed. A note tucked under the wiper. "Last chance, Carter." Back at the precinct, she sent the photos to Mike Russo, her partner. "Klein's in on it," she said. "He's protecting Jonathan." The lab called with a bombshell. The knife's handle had Jonathan's fingerprints, and the blood was a 100% match to Sarah. Amy's board was a web now. Jonathan, Dorsey, Klein, and that $10,000 deposit in '95. She dug into Klein's finances, finding a trail of payments to Dorsey's account, starting a month after Sarah's murder. A cover-up. She confronted Dorsey at his apartment, slamming the journal on his table. "You took money to lie," she said. Dorsey's face crumpled. "They said they'd kill me," he whispered. "Klein's people. Jonathan was there that night, bleeding. I didn't know he killed her until later." Amy's voice was steel. Who's they? Dorsey shook his head, his eyes darting to the door. You don't get it, Carter. They own this city. Amy tailed Jonathan to St. Mary's Church, where he was setting up for a fundraiser. Ellen was there, her smile strained. Amy noticed Jonathan's arm again, the scar, barely visible, but there. She waited until he was alone, then confronted him. I know you were in the woods, Jonathan, she said, holding up the letter's photo. Sarah scratched you. Your blood on her. His face paled, but he laughed, soft and cold. You've got nothing, detective. Just a handkerchief and a story. Amy leaned closer. And a knife, Jonathan, with your prints. His eyes flickered, but he turned away. As she left, Ellen grabbed her arm. Be careful, she whispered, her voice shaking. He's not what he seems. That night, Amy staked out the warehouse, her gun ready. Klein and Jonathan met again, their voices low. She's too close, Klein hissed. Jonathan's voice was calm. Then handle it. Amy caught it all, but a hand grabbed her from behind, a cloth pressed to her face. Chloroform. She fought, her vision blurring, and woke in a dark room, her hands tied. Jonathan stood over her, his face no longer kind. You should have listened, he said, holding the knife from the storage unit. Sarah was a mistake, but you aren't. Amy's heart pounded, but she saw a crack in his mask. Fear. You're under his control. Klein's using you. Jonathan's hand shook, but footsteps interrupted. A new voice. Cold and sharp. Enough, Wheeler. Amy's blood froze. Someone bigger was pulling the strings, and she was out of time. The precinct was chaos when Mike found Amy's tracker signal at the warehouse. He called the FBI, sharing Amy's photos and the knife's results. As sirens wailed, Jonathan fled, leaving Amy tied. Klein was gone, but the documents in the warehouse named him and a shadowy group tied to City Hall. Amy broke free, her head spinning, and stumbled outside as the FBI swarmed. Her phone buzzed. One last text. You'll never catch him. The True Crime Podcast 2025 was at its peak, and the Boston murder mystery was a house of cards ready to collapse. Jonathan was the killer, but someone, Klein or higher, was keeping him untouchable. And Amy was their next target. The shadows of Boston are relentless, and in April 2025, they're closing in. 30 years ago, Sarah Evans, a 19-year-old college freshman, was found dead in Blue Hills Reservation, her throat slashed, a blood-stained handkerchief clutched in her hand. The cold case murder went unsolved until a DNA match named Jonathan Wheeler, a 55-year-old Deacon and family man, as the killer. His blood on the cloth, his DNA under Sarah's nails, and her blood on his knife sealed his guilt. Detective Amy Carter has fought through threats, slashed tires, and a chloroform ambush to uncover a web of lies tying Jonathan to Paul Dorsey, a park ranger who covered for him, and Edward Klein, a city councilor with dirty money. Someone bigger is pulling the strings, and Amy's life is on the line. Welcome to the final chapter of The Blood-Stained Handkerchief, where the truth of a Boston murder mystery cuts like a blade. Amy's head throbbed from the chloroform, her wrists raw from the ropes. She was in a South Boston warehouse, Jonathan Wheeler looming over her, the knife from his storage unit glinting in his hand. His face was no longer the kind Deacon's. His eyes burned with rage. Sarah was a mistake, he said, his voice low. But you, Carter, you're a problem. Amy's heart pounded, but she saw his hand shake. Klein's using you, she said, her voice steady despite the fear. Who's he protecting? A new voice cut in, cold, sharp, unfamiliar. Enough, Wheeler. A man stepped from the shadows, his suit crisp, his face hidden by a cap. Amy's blood froze. This was the puppet master. Jonathan hesitated, the knife lowering. She knows too much, the man said. Finish it. Amy's mind raced. She'd seen the documents in the warehouse. Klein's payments to Dorsey, Jonathan's $10,000 deposit in 1995, a cover-up tied to City Hall. Her tracker had pinged her partner, Mike Russo, before she was grabbed. She needed time. "You're not in charge," she said to the man in the cap. "Who are you?" He laughed, stepping closer. "Someone who keeps the city clean, detective." His voice was familiar. She had heard it at the gala, shaking hands with Jonathan. It was Victor Marsh, a real estate tycoon with ties to Boston's elite. Amy's pulse spiked. Marsh was the power behind Klein, the one who'd kept Jonathan untouchable for 30 years. Sirens wailed outside, cutting through the tension. Jonathan's eyes widened, the knife dropping slightly. Amy seized her chance, kicking his shin and rolling free. The ropes fell loose. She'd been working them against a jagged crate. She lunged for the knife, but Marsh drew a gun, his face calm. "You're persistent," he said, "but this ends here." Before he could fire, the warehouse doors burst open, FBI agents flooding in, led by Mike. "Drop it," Mike shouted. Jonathan froze, the knife clattering to the floor. Marsh bolted, but agents tackled him. Amy stumbled to her feet, her vision clearing, her heart pounding. "You got my signal," she gasped to Mike. He nodded, cuffing Jonathan. "Your tracker saved you." In custody, Jonathan cracked. His confession spilled out like blood. "Sarah was an accident," he said, his voice hollow. "I followed her in the woods. She was pretty, alone. I tried to talk, but she fought me, scratched me. I panicked, grabbed my knife." His blood on the handkerchief came from her nails tearing his arm. Dorsey saw him fleeing, bleeding, and took $500 to stay quiet. Klein, a young lawyer in 1995, paid Jonathan $10,000 to keep his name out of it, backed by Marsh, who wanted no scandal tied to his rising empire. "They owned me," he said. "I had to live their lie." Amy stared at him, the Deacon's mask dawn, revealing a coward who'd hidden behind a perfect life. Klein confessed next, desperate to save himself. Marsh ran the show. He paid to bury the case, cops, witnesses, evidence. Jonathan was a loose end, but he played the good guy, so we let him live. Marsh stayed silent, his lawyers circling, but the documents from the warehouse were enough. Bank records showed his payments to Klein and Dorsey, and a 1995 memo linked him to a cover-up of the Evans problem. The handkerchief, knife, and DNA tied Jonathan to the murder, while Marsh's empire crumbled under RICO charges. Dorsey, broken, admitted his role, facing perjury for his silence. Amy stood outside the precinct, the Boston skyline sharp against the April dusk. The lab confirmed the knife's fingerprints and Sarah's blood, closing the case. Jonathan's wife, Ellen, was shattered, her faith in him broken. "I didn't know," she whispered to Amy. The headlines screamed, "Church Deacon exposed as killer in 30-year cold case murder." Amy visited Blue Hills one last time, the carved tree with JW, now a relic of justice. The handkerchief, once a silent witness, had spoken. Sarah's family, older but grateful, thanked Amy, their grief softened by closure. Marsh's trial loomed, but Jonathan's was over. Life without parole. The city moved on, its lights brighter now. Amy walked away from the forest, the weight of the case lifting. The True Crime Podcast 2025 had its ending, but the scars remained. Jonathan's perfect life was a lie, built on Sarah's blood. Dorsey's silence, Klein's money, Marsh's power, they'd kept him free for 30 years, but not forever. Amy looked at the evidence bag one last time. The blood-stained handkerchief faded, but unyielding. The Boston murder mystery was solved, and the man who played innocent for 30 decades will spend the rest of his life in prison because DNA never lies.